Tell me a little bit about the Freedom Schools. What did you do in those Freedom Schools?
Well, there were about 3 started. We had good cooperation from some of the African American ministers. I taught Black history, of course, and I did it as well the same way that I did what you might experience when you were at WTMJ. I would use my art ability and draw something, okay? And you find that the teaching experience, you realize young children are more hip than what you think they are. And they're more free. You know I used to do a thing with Hannibal and the elephants, okay? And I draw this picture and I talk about Hannibal and I talk about in the boats and crossing Alps and everything, and I draw this picture for 6th and 7th graders, okay? Then I'd ask them to draw a picture. Many of them had difficulty doing it. They'd say, well, how do you draw a trunk? How do you draw elephant's legs? How do you draw a tusk? Whereas the little 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, the little kids, you say draw them, they just make a couple of marks. This is a big circle, there's his legs, some sticks and stuff. So it's something that I learned as a teacher, what teachers are confronted with by teaching.
The Freedom Schools themselves, who attended and how did you get people to attend?
That was Maryland's PR thing. She had the help of so many people. We had a whole truckload, a whole busload of white folk from up north, kids who were in school teaching, you know, college. I remember a big meeting we had at St. Matthew Church. Somehow she had pointed out the places where you could teach, and you go there, and you know there were 2 boycotts. There were 2 of them. And she had it so well organized that, and she didn't try to tell people what to teach. She was a teacher. But she gave them ideas, and we had little meetings before the school as to where the places were. And so those Freedom Schools were something to really, really remember, because they certainly provided somewhat of an alternative to the public school, which Bill Story, who was a lawyer for the public schools, and Lorraine Radke, they had their continuous fight with Lloyd, who generally won that battle. He won that battle, didn't get paid until about 6, 7 years after it was all over with. And the tragedy of that, integrating the schools where the master, who was supposed to do a lot of working around, is that we came up with the schools, Dennis Conda's bill. Then you had black kids going over to white schools.
Right. Back to the Freedom Schools. Which one were you working with?
Well, I remember there was one at, let's see, where was that? At Lee Street. I think there was one at 9th Street, and there was one over at, there were 3 of them. I only taught at one, okay? And you could say what you wanted to teach, and I wanted to teach small kids and junior high school kids.
Who taught there with you? Do you remember some of the names?
Oh, some of those guys are not here anymore, but it's hard for me to think about who was there. I think John Givens might have taught at some of the schools. You know, that was a long time ago.
How long did they last?
Well, we only had two boycotts, and they were about 2 or 3 weeks apart. So it was, you know, during the school, and it, in spite of, I think the journal, if you go back in history, you can find that there was an appreciable deficit at public schools.
It had an impact.
It had a definite impact. Yes, it did. Now, there was another question somebody had.
And you wanted to know more about the Freedom Schools?
No, the education. Lloyd Barbie and the education.
Oh, Lord Bybee.
We got about 2 minutes.
Yeah. Very briefly, tell me a little bit about Lloyd and what he did with the schools and the segregation.
Well, he was the backbone. He was the master planner of the whole desegregated school thing. And, you know, at that time it made sense, okay? Some people argue that right now, because of the overwhelming number of African Americans, and the conditions that exist now, it's very difficult for some people to look and say that was a good thing, okay? Because the population now of African Americans is over 220,000, whereas at that time maybe it was 100 or whatever it was. So the whole idea of integration made sense. Now maybe it doesn't make any sense.
What did Lloyd have to do? I mean, he had the lawsuit.
He was a lawyer. He filed a lawsuit. He would have debates out at school, out at MPS. He was a legislator at the time, if you remember. So he was responsible for keeping everybody honest, okay? Because I think that was a big thing, because there were a lot of people that want to throw bricks. Okay, a lot of people want to burn things down, me being one, okay? But Lloyd had a lot of work to do to say, hey, we can do this, but we have to be calm, okay? Can't be like George Sanders wants to throw everything out the window, baby bathwater and everything else. We have to be calm, we have to be cool. That philosophy works. The leadership, I think, is just stressful as heck. I could never do that, okay?
Which had a greater impact? The desegregation